think you can see me now. Anyway, a very good evening to everyone. I hope you can see, you can hear. So this is Open Sangha at Urban Dharma. And we, as you probably know, are in the midst of a new series on the topic of Lojong. But nonetheless, following the format that we have established for our Open Sangha program that meets every Thursday. Before this pandemic, of course, we meet at the temple. And then now, of course, all of us, I'm sure if you're watching, you're probably in a place where you have to stay at home or shelter in place or movement control order, all the different terminologies. Anyway, a very good evening or good morning in some cases. I'm happy to be able to share with you the Dharma, and with the hope that it can be of help to you, especially now, but more importantly than especially now is that it will become helpful to you beyond our present context. So the format is that we're going to start with about half an hour of guided meditation. And then after that, we will do a quick break. And then we will come back and I will speak on I will teach from this text called the Mahayana Lojong in 7 points. This text, if you Google this text, Mahayana Lojong in 7 points, you can easily find several translations available freely for you to download. But if you are interested in the particular one that I'm using, which is a translation that I have kind of massaged here and there a little bit, then you can go to Tibetanspirit.com and there look under the tab that says text, or just do a search for Mahayana Lojong in 7 points, and you should be able to download the particular version that I'm using. So we will start with the guided meditation at the beginning. And the way I'm going to, and the particular guided meditation that I'm going to share with you today will be a guided meditation grounded in the Lojong tradition. So if you have been following this series, basically the first of the 7 points of this Lojong in 7 points consists of only one-liner. Yeah, consists of only one-liner. And this one-liner says, first train in the preliminaries. So the preliminaries that we should train in, there are 2 aspects to it. One is you could say, the preliminaries that will help us free ourselves from distractions when we understand certain basic realities. Having an understanding, even an intellectual understanding, appreciating intellectually a number of truths about our reality, about our situation, will help us free ourselves from distractions. Because in the end, distractions, or in some other spiritual traditions, so I think I know one definition of sin in the Christian tradition is the heart that is misdirected. So a heart that is misdirected is where sin comes from. So of course, in the Buddha Dharma, distraction so is said to be as well the main culprit. So then when we're distracted, then we act without clarity, we act without insight, we act without understanding. Then we create suffering for ourselves, we create suffering for others. So the preliminaries of knowing certain basic facts, such as impermanence, uncertainty, change, such as, recognizing how wonderful an opportunity we have right now in this lifetime, that we have encountered the Dharma, and we are able to practice the Dharma without much obstacles. So recognizing how amazing it is from that perspective, that here we are, that the Dharma is available, and also very importantly, that mysteriously we have an interest in this topic, and we're making time for it. And so recognizing that, we say, this is really good, this is really amazing. And so the Buddha in the text, it gives the example, the situation that we have right now, even if you think, oh, it's not so good, it's terrible, but actually the situation that we have right now is so amazing and so rare, it is said, that it is like if there was a blind turtle that lived at in the big ocean, and every 100 years this turtle comes up to the surface of the ocean and stick its neck out into above the water. And meanwhile, in this big ocean, there is a plank with a hole in the middle. And the chances of this turtle, every 100 years when it sticks its head out of the water, the chances of this head meeting the hole that is in this random plank in this big ocean, it says that the chances of those two meeting is even greater than the chances that we are going to have this opportunity, this lifetime endowed with these kind of interest in this topic, the availability of the teachings for us to practice, and the environment that is conducive to practicing. That, it says, it's not going to come again. It's so rare. So understanding that helps us to not get yanked away by all kinds of distractions. Then recognizing impermanence and change, uncertainty, also important. Then recognizing how cause and effect is unmistaken. If we are experiencing things that we now label as undesirable, it's because we have planted the causes for that. And if likewise, if we're experiencing things that we label as good, desirable, it's also because we have planted the causes of that. So then thinking going forward for the long term, what do we want? If we want happiness, then we have to learn how to create the causes of happiness. What do we don't want? If we don't want suffering, we have to learn how to not create not plant those seeds that will ripen as suffering in the future. The future could be tomorrow, future could be next moment, future could be next year, future could be next life. And so this is, again, this is like a way to kind of not just, do things, simply for instant gratification, but to have this broader view. Sometimes when we talk about next life, or life after death, we feel like, oh, this is like, postponing your joy. But on the other hand, if we can only think of satisfying ourselves this moment and one instant gratification, then a lot of times, we create all kinds of unskillful actions all for the sake of this fleeting pleasure or fleeting wanting to get away from pain in this moment, then we set a whole future of suffering. So we need to understand how cause and effect works. And then finally, the fourth preliminary is to consider, to take a moment to consider, like, as long as we exist under the power of the afflictive emotions, as long as we exist under the power of confusion, under the power of attachment and aversion, and then no matter where we are necessarily, it's going to be unsatisfactory. And no matter where we are, no matter how much of what we label as good that we are getting, eventually we get tired of that, and we will be unsatisfied again, and we will be stressed again, and we will be unhappy again, and we will suffer again. And so recognizing that as long as we are under the power of confusion, there's no way we can have real freedom. Therefore, making a determination, I need to stay focused and do this practice. And so it's with sort of these four, what's known as these four thoughts that turn the mind. It's with this kind of reflecting on these truths that we then say, okay, now I'm going to practice this meditation. I'm going to practice without distractions. So that's a preliminary to the meditation that we're going to do. And this, then it says, the next preliminary is you need to find a way to inspire yourself. If the first set of contemplation is kind of like to negatively inspire you, meaning you see, oh, wow, I cannot waste time anymore. I really need to focus on this. Then the next set is to be inspired by thinking of those great beings, those sublime beings who have achieved the state of complete freedom from confusion, complete freedom from suffering, and to see them and to be inspired by them. And in Buddhist expression, we say to take refuge in them, right? To say, I want to be like you. So show me the way, protect me from suffering. And how do they protect us from suffering? By showing us the way. And then say, help me, to walk the same path that you walked. Help me to achieve what you achieve as well. And in that way, you become inspired by the example of these sublime beings, such as the Buddha. For all Buddhists, we look to Buddha Shakyamuni as that supreme example that we will follow, that we admire, but not just admiring, but also saying, I want to be like you. So that's an important preliminary. Then finally, the preliminary that is also necessary is the understanding bodhicitta. Understanding that what we are going to be doing, though we begin by focusing just on ourselves, focusing on how to tame our minds, focusing on how not to be distracted by all the distractions that's out there. So even though what we're doing now is very much working with ourselves, working with our stuff or our issues, although we're doing it this way, but we should do it this way because we understand that if we really want to help others, if we really, or at least we should say, if we don't want to cause harm to others, then the best way to do that is to watch our actions of body, speech, and mind. And so then meditation is an important part of this watching. Training the mind is an important part of making sure that we know how to skillfully care for ourselves. We know how to skillfully achieve meaningful, lasting happiness. And in knowing how to do that, then we are in a much better position to be able to help others. And so this is called generating bodhicitta. So these three preliminaries should sort of be the entry, at the entry point to the meditation session that we're going to start. It has to be these three elements. And in terms of technique of meditation, it's basically counting breath from 1 to 21. So as breath enters and goes out, you mentally count 1. Goes in and out, you count 2. Mentally 3, 4, 5, up to 21. If, and you will, it's not if, but rather when you lose your way, you lose your focus, then start again with 1. And when you lose focus, you have not failed. It's not a failure. It's quite normal to lose count. Although the goal is to try to be able to keep your presence of mind here where your body is, to keep your mind present here by using your breath as the anchoring object so that presence can be established. It's when we lose our presence that all kinds of unskillful actions of body, speech, and mind take place. And so that's why it's so important as a foundation, as a preliminary, to establish presence. And we establish presence in this tradition by counting our breaths to 21. So that's what the main technique is for this part and for this meditation that we'll be doing. So we're going to start now. So again, please check and make sure that your sound, your microphone is muted. First, you begin by allowing your body to settle naturally into its own place. Now slowly adjust your body to make sure that you are seated firm and stable, first point. And second point, to make sure that you're seated upright. So firm and stable and weight equally distributed is the first point. Second point, with the back, your torso upright. These two will promote stability of mind as well as clarity of mind. For our body and our mind are completely fused. And what happens to the body affects the mind, and what happens to the mind affects the body. But first, it is easier to work with the body, to begin with the body. So feel your body, be present with your body. Bring your attention to being aware of sitting right where you are sitting. Be aware of the seat that you are sitting on, a seat that is in a specific spot in the room that you are in, which is a specific spot in the house that you are in, which is a specific spot in the part of town that you are in the town or city that you are in, which is in the region of the country that you are in. And in that part of the world that we are in, moving outwards, gaining a greater and broader sense of being in place. And then zooming back right to the seat that you're seated on. Spend a few moments fine-tuning your awareness of being in place, being in body, being in place. And take your place with confidence, with presence. Take your place on the seat of enlightenment, on the seat of awakening. Take your place, ascend the throne, and claim your seat of enlightenment right here, right now. At your own pace, when you are ready, you can start counting your breath. For every inhalation and exhalation, mentally count 1, and then 2, and then 3, all the way to 21. Tell yourself that there is nothing else to do right now, but to simply stay with your breath. In, out, 1. In, out, 2. In, out, 3. All the way to 21. A second way of counting is to count 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, all the way to 1, 7, then 2, 1, 2, 2, all the way to 2, 7, then 3, 1, 3, 2, all the way to 3, 7. And with that, you have counted to 21. In between sets of 21, you can let your mind just be natural, no need to count, and just maintain that presence that have been established through the counting. And then if the mind scatters again, then you can go back to counting. Otherwise, you can drop the counting when your mind, you feel, is present with your body. And then at that point, simply focus on the sensation of breath coming in and breath going out. More than the sensation, you can think how, as breath comes in, lots of space is experienced within your own mind, within your own heart. Lots of space is experienced. And as you breathe out into space again. Breathe in, breathing in, you bring space into your own internal world. Breathing out, you release all of the things that you're holding on to into space. And allowing them to dissolve into the space that is outside. You breathe in again, breathing in spaciousness. Breathing out, you relax and you release. Breathing in, you invite space into your internal world. And breathing out, you release everything into space. So counting breath is the main technique given for this preliminary meditation in this Lojong in 7 points. The second point of Lojong is called the main point, which is the training in the 2 bodhicittas. Today, this evening, we will look at that particular point and some other point as well. But under that point, the first one-liner, in the second point, there are 10 altogether, 10 one-liners. 5 of those pertains to ultimate bodhicitta, and the other 5 pertains to relative bodhicitta. So right now, we will have a very short break, just a few minutes, so that you can stretch a little bit, maybe go get a sip of water or something like that, and then we will continue by looking at the text. And also now, perhaps it's a good time to find a copy of this text if you don't have it. So if you Google Mahayana Lojong in 7 points, you should be able to find it. So we'll take a quick break. Second part, I'm going to read out loud, and you can just listen to the relative bodhicitta recitations. And so relative bodhicitta, so the 2 main trainings of bodhicitta is the ultimate bodhicitta and the relative bodhicitta. I remember in past weeks I said to very briefly say, what is ultimate bodhicitta? Ultimate bodhicitta pertains to wisdom, pertains to clear seeing, and in particular, seeing clearly that there is no inherent existence in anything whatsoever, which is also expressed as emptiness. And we'll learn more about that. And then relative bodhicitta pertains to love and compassion. Love and compassion without limits, being directed at all sentient beings without exception. And also, so there is the aspect of without exception, and there's also the aspect of it's a particular kind of love and compassion, which is the love and compassion that wants them to be free from suffering and to achieve true happiness. So it's that kind of love and compassion. So these are briefly what constitutes ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. Then to train in relative bodhicitta, there is what's known as aspiration bodhicitta, aspiration aspect, and engagement aspect. And so this recitation I'm going to do now, the first one pertains to aspiration aspect of relative bodhicitta, and the second one pertains to the engagement aspect of relative bodhicitta. So you can just listen. Yeah. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstruct us who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening. So that's the aspiration aspect of relative bodhicitta. And next, the engagement aspect of relative bodhicitta. Thus, until I achieve awakening, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. And so this is a very brief but succinct but also complete way of expressing, what is this relative bodhicitta. And so in the aspiration aspect, here it says, towards all beings, without any exception, especially those whom we find to be the most challenging and the most difficult, and even if we label the most evil, with regards to all beings, and especially to those, right? May they experience happiness. That is love, the definition of love, or metta. This love is more a sense of like friendliness, wishing of well-being to someone else. So this is love. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. And that's the definition of compassion, karuna. Karuna is this one, when you see someone suffering, and then, even without being taught, so we know this is an innate quality. When we see someone suffering, even without being taught, we cannot stand to see that. It's like you look away, and you're like, I don't want to see that, and that is the basis of what we call compassion. It's like we're just not comfortable. On the other hand, when we see, happiness, immediately we're like, Now, in the next moment, you might recognize it's someone whom you label as an enemy having happiness, and you might change your mind, But if you didn't know who it was, if you didn't register it yet, when it pertains to happiness, or when you didn't register it yet when it pertains to someone suffering, very naturally, when you see that happiness, you're like, it feels so good. And then when you see the suffering, you're like, I don't want that. So that shows that these qualities are innate to us. And the Lojong tradition is just helping us to develop this to its fullest. And then again, in the next moment when you see suffering and you see, actually, that guy, he deserves it, then this is no longer, this is what we would call nurture, not nature, not natural. That which is natural is just comes before other labels come into the picture. And so here they say, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. Love and compassion, metta and karuna. Then there's this important part. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening or Buddhahood. So this love and compassion, if we have this kind of love and compassion, but then we say, and in order for others to have this love and compassion, in order for them to experience happiness and to be free from suffering, I should put all my efforts into taking them to Disneyland or the Bahamas. Then this is lacking understanding, because those places are only at most going to bring temporary happiness and temporary freedom from suffering. So it even in relative bodhicitta, there is still the wisdom aspect. Ultimate bodhicitta is about wisdom. What's foregrounded is wisdom in ultimate bodhicitta. What's foregrounded in relative bodhicitta is love and compassion, but wisdom still needs to be present. And in this case is the wisdom of understanding that the only way any of us is going to have lasting happiness and lasting freedom from suffering is when we become Buddhists. And therefore, we strive for that goal so that as Buddhists, we can more effectively benefit others, help others, liberate others. Then in absolute bodhicitta, even though wisdom is what's foregrounded. In the more detailed teachings about that kind of wisdom, about recognizing the nature of all phenomena, about recognizing then, more importantly, the nature of our own minds, our own hearts, our own being. It is said that once we recognize the lack of inherent existence or the emptiness of inherent existence, once we recognize that, the energy of compassion and love naturally flows. So even though absolute bodhicitta pertains to wisdom, and wisdom is what's foregrounded, love and compassion is on the other side of this coin. So that love and compassion cannot be far. Likewise, in relative bodhicitta, love and compassion is foregrounded, but wisdom cannot be absent. And so then ultimately, relative and absolute bodhicitta is, again, two aspects, two sides of the same coin, two sides of the same hand, and they are non-dual, they are inseparable. Yeah. So, now let's look at specifically the text, Mahayana Lojong, in 7 points. So again, just to get to remember these 7 points on page 1, first is the presentation of the preliminaries, the basis of our training, and there's only one-liner. Then second, training in the 2 bodhicittas, which is the main practice. So the main heart of this Mahayana Lojong in 7 points is in this second point. And there, 10 one-liners, or more commonly, they call it slogans. I sort of like the one-liners. So 10 one-liners. On page 3, the third point is how to take adversities and release them, so to say, onto our spiritual path. Normally, we think, the spiritual path is the path that helps us avoid adversities. But here, it says, you go take adversities that have already turned up, you take them, you don't reject them, you release them into your training ground. So that's point number 3. Point number 4 on page 5, it's a lifetime's practice in summary. And there's only 2 one-liners. The first one pertains to, both of them are talking about what's called the 5 strengths or the 5 powers. How to apply the 5 strengths throughout one's life, and how to apply the same 5 strengths, but in a different context, which is the crucial point of when we know that we're actively dying, how to apply those 5 points, the 5 strengths, sorry. The 5th point is called the measure of having trained the mind. And we actually started this series by looking at this, the 5th point. Because here it's saying, if you want to know, whether you're doing this right or wrong, if you want to measure to see how much you have advanced, or if you're going in the right direction with this training, then see if the following 4 things are happening naturally, are happening without you even needing to think about it. So this is the 5th point. 6th point on page 7 is the commitments of mind training. Meaning, if we want to not let our mind training deteriorate. What do we need to protect? What do we need to do to protect our mind training, our commitment to mind training from being eroded, from being compromised? So most of the one-liners here are expressed in negative terms, which is don't do this, give that up, don't do that, and give this up. It's stated like this. Then finally, in the seventh point, it's called the guidelines or the precepts for mind training. And here it's more prescriptive. Say, do this, do this, do this, and do this, and do this, and do this. So 6 and 7, you can say, is basically the do's and the don'ts. Right? If you want to keep your commitment to mind training, here are the do's and the don'ts. If you want to make sure that the main practice in point number 2 can successfully completely transform your mind, train your mind from monkey mind, distracted mind, mind under the power of afflictive emotions, confused mind, and train it into bodhicitta. So that's the definition of mind training. What are we training the mind? How are we training the mind? We are training the mind that is now under the power of confusion so that it becomes the Bodhi mind, which is what bodhicitta means, to become the Bodhi mind. So these are the 7 points. So let me pause here and see if there are any questions. You can maybe ask if you're not shy about unmuting yourself and ask the question. Or if you like, my voice, if it's a little sore right now, then you can type in the chat for those of you who are on Zoom. And then maybe our host, Fabiola, can read those questions to me. And I will take a look on Facebook to see if I can see any questions there. So we will divide our respective jobs.
Dr. Lai, we have a question.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
What are the 5 strengths?
Never mind. I'm not going to answer that because that belongs to this 4th point. At some point, we'll get to the 4th point.
I have a question, Dr. Lai. When we were talking about this earlier, I think the first evening we were talking about it. Can you interchange ultimate and absolute, as well as interchange conventional and relative?
Yeah, sure. These are just English choices that we make. Yes. They are equivalent. Absolute, ultimate, conventional, relative.
Right.
But you can't interchange across, okay?
Okay.
You can interchange across. Relative and ultimate is not interchangeable.
All right, I follow now.
Yes.
Another question, Dr. Lai.
Yes.
Somebody asks, can you please give an example of bringing adversity to the path?
Yes, and again, we will be looking more closely on that point when we get to that point. But basically, like the end of last class, I said I gave a situation. I was talking about a situation where, habitually, when we find ourselves in a tight spot, when we find ourselves in a situation where we don't like, it's like, very disappointing, very annoying, very disagreeable, then immediately, we're like, I want out, I don't want this, I didn't ask for this, I don't want this, I don't deserve this, la 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 la, all that comes in, you know. Now, it's, at least I would say, it's entirely plausible that any of those statements that you might make, I did not ask for this, I don't deserve this, it's not my fault. It's entirely possible that any of those things could be true. So that's a separate issue. The issue that Lojong would get us asking is, regardless of that, regardless of those other concerns, is it true? Do you deserve it? Did you bring it upon yourself, so to say? Regardless of what the answers are to that, in the Lojong case, it wants us to see, but nonetheless, now that this adversity, this difficulty has already turned up, what are we going to do with it? One, run away as fast as possible. Two, shoot the ones who brought this here. Three, bury the head in sand. No, it's not here. No, it's not here. So in the Lojong tradition, it says, actually, this adversity that has arisen becomes that which is going to polish the diamond that you are. Actually, Lojong tradition is, it's called Mahayana Lojong. And one of the key points in the Mahayana teachings is, you are a diamond. You are Buddha. That's what your nature is. But right now, this nature, this diamond, is hidden. Just like when diamond is found in the raw, it needs to be polished. So when difficulties arise, when disagreeable situations arise, use it to polish the diamond that you are. Not, oh, I deserve this, so yes, let me take the suffering, I deserve this, yeah, I deserve this, and you want to be a martyr, or you want to be, or you want to, some of us love guilt, like, so tasty, even as we're suffering, we love feeling guilt. No, this is not about taking adversities onto the path. It's not it's not to be understood as, oh, you deserve it, so you should endure it, so you should like quietly, swallow all of it. No, you take the difficulties and the challenges and the disagreeable feelings and the situation, and you use that to polish the diamond that you are. That does not preclude, on a more conventional level, I believe, addressing if there are wrongs that you need to address. I say, let's be realistic, take care of those things, in the workplace or whatever. If you're being, bullied or sued, I don't think the Lojong tradition is saying, oh, don't do anything about it. In fact, of course, there are stories of some really strong and powerful practitioners. Even when they're wrongly accused, they do not retaliate. But for them, right, it's coming from a place of strength and understanding, not coming from a place where they are like powerless. So there's one story about a Zen master, I think in Japan, in ancient Japan. Very popular, very famous, very well respected. Then one day, a woman, this woman is from the village or a nearby town. She comes to this Zen master with a newborn child in her hand. And she came here and she said, and in the midst of everybody, this teacher was teaching, she said, this child is yours. Now take him. And apparently this monk just said, okay, I will. Of course, everybody, everybody was shocked. And very soon, right, rumors spread everywhere about how this monk, oh, he looks so good, sounds so good, all of that. Little do we know, he broke his vow of celibacy and he had the relationship with this woman and now a child is born. So the monk, did not say anything. So the woman left. Then he took the child and he took care of the child. Found a wet nurse, everything. Of course, people came like, how could you do this? How is this possible? And every time people came and complained and scolded him, he said, is that so? When they say, you're a terrible person, you're horrible, you've been lying to us, his only answer was, is that so? And it is said that, 15, 20 years later, this child has grown up. And then this woman comes back and she makes a public confession. And she said, I got in trouble. I got pregnant. I had no other solution to this but to bring this child to this monk, knowing that so many people say that he is compassionate, he is kind. I saw no other way out but to hope that he will take care of this child for me. And everybody, felt so bad, And they all came back to the monk. Oh, we're sorry, we've wrongly accused you. And then to every statement that people made, guess what the monk said? Is that so? Now, this is a Lojong practitioner with a lot of strength. Never in the whole 20 years, he felt like he was a victim. The conditions from superficial looking, indeed, we could label that condition at the beginning of the 20 years is an adversity whereby he was falsely accused. And that's one of the worst things, I can tell you. When you're falsely accused by others for something that you did not do, our instinct is to immediately fight back. Or at the very least, if it's not fighting back, we try to clarify. But here, not out of martyrdom, not out of a martyr syndrome, this monk, he with strength, with power, he took this and polished the diamond that he is. And then, all he said was, is that so? And I think that's a good phrase, Each time we encounter difficulties, and then we might even say to ourselves, oh, this is terrible, this is not bearable, this is impossible. I think that phrase can be very useful. Imagine that it's that monk saying to you, is that so?
Dr. Lopan?
Yes.
And why Geshe Chekawa starts with ultimate bodhicitta?
Why? So the question is, why in this text does it begin with ultimate bodhicitta? Yeah,
yes.
Right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Good. So we'll look at that. So before I answer that, let's see, are there any other questions that you really have to ask right now?
No.
Yes, no? If no, then we will answer that question. We will now look at, so let's now look at the main training. So the main training, point 2. Okay, so let's look at point 2. Very good. Point 2. Training in the two bodhicittas, the main practice. In Geshe Chekawa's text, very interestingly, he begins with ultimate or absolute bodhicitta before he teaches relative bodhicitta. The question that was just asked comes from someone who's quite familiar with the way usually in more standard Tibetan Buddhist practice. More typically, we will see a more kind of, you could say, gradual progression. You start with the preliminaries, and so then whenever ultimate and relative comes into the picture, 99% of the time you will start with relative first before you would attempt anything that is labeled as ultimate. But in this case, it's just the other way around. In fact, this is so kind of, you can say, odd, this structure, that some editions of this text was rearranged by later people, some later masters. They rearranged this text so that they moved those lines pertaining to this ultimate bodhicitta to the end of the text. Because, you know, they're so committed to the idea that, oh, no, you have to start with relative before you go to ultimate. Here, for Geshe Chekawa, first thing is this. I can say, you know, like this particular arrangement, and that's why I keep emphasizing, you know, I think what I want to emphasize is not just, you know, these one-liners, but where these one-liners turn up and the structure that Geshe Chekawa gave to these one-liners. That's why I personally feel that in the more popular way of talking about Lojong, in the West especially, there's this, I guess, custom now, tradition now that says, oh, there are 59 slogans, and then even these cards, 59, and you shuffle those cards, you know, like they're playing cards, and then every day you pull one card out and you say, oh, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to think about this. It's not wrong, you can do that. But when you do that, what you risk losing is the logic and therefore the power, the full extent and the full power of this text in the way that Geshe Chekawa has intended it, have arranged it. So here he says, before you train in relative, you train first in ultimate. First point he's making here. That point tells us something, which is, from his standpoint, ultimate and relative is not first step, second step. Wherever you put the relative and the ultimate, it's not first step, second step. And for sure, it is not relative is less good, ultimate is more good. So you start with, you know, salad, then you go to your main course. No, he doesn't see the relationship between relative and ultimate that way. So neither does he say, first you eat your main course, then you eat your salad. He doesn't say that. He sees these two that we call ultimate and relative as, again, two sides of the same coin. Given that they are two sides of the same coin, why does he start with the ultimate side first? Because we know in, you could say, 90% of other cases, or even 99% of other cases of Tibetan Buddhist practice, you always start with relative first. Here, you start with ultimate first because you need to have some grounding, some basic foundation in understanding the true state of things before you can do the relative bodhicitta training. Because relative bodhicitta training, specifically in this text, involves taking on the suffering of others and giving them your happiness, which is the practice of Tonglen. Taking on the suffering of others and giving away your happiness. The reason why ultimate bodhicitta needs to be attended to first is so that when you do the relative bodhicitta main training of Tonglen, that Tonglen is not going to become a burden. If you do Tonglen without some protection from ultimate bodhicitta, it can go very wrong, actually. Especially psychologically, I think like many of us, or I've seen enough of us, especially I think in the West, who somehow have this idealization / addiction to suffering. Stated differently, some of us beat ourselves up all the time. We're very harsh on ourselves. We're very unforgiving on ourselves. So we somehow feed on suffering. And so, personally, I feel if you went straight to relative bodhicitta training of Tonglen here without first understanding, even just intellectually understanding the teachings related to absolute bodhicitta, then Tonglen could backfire. I can tell you one anecdote, and this is related to practice of Tonglen and Tibetan medicine. I know a Tibetan doctor who described to me what he observed, So the couple of times this doctor came to visit to the West, understandably, the people who come to consult him tend to be Dharma practitioners. And so he told me that he noticed something, he said, and he was a little concerned. And so he was talking to me knowing that I'm a Dharma teacher. He said, I noticed that with the patients that I have, many of them have what we would call wind energy imbalances, lung, wind energy imbalances. Tibetan medicine looks at the human body as being, that the human body has 3 types of energy. One's called wind energy, one's called bile energy, and one's called phlegm energy. So kind of related to the Greek notions of the 3 humors. So this is not literally wind, phlegm, and bile, but they are 3 types of energy that is called wind, bile and phlegm. And he said, first of all, he said, majority of Americans that he has seen that have come to consult, majority of them have wind energy disorders. And wind energy disorders is primarily caused by desire, ambitions, and more to the point, frustrated desires that cannot be fulfilled. But anyway, the main point related to Lojong is, and Tonglen is, he said, yeah, so I see a lot of wind imbalances. And then he says something else that I see, he says, and then when I talk to them more after a few consultations, and then when I ask them about meditation, if they're doing any meditation, and he said, I'm really surprised when I hear them saying, oh, I'm doing Tonglen meditation. And he said, and he said, when I heard that, he said, I was thinking, oh no, you should not be doing that. He said, because with wind energy imbalances, one of the symptoms that you suffer from is this mood swing. And they become very extreme. Very happy, very sad, very happy, very sad, very happy, very sad. Irritability. Energy can be very high, very low. It swings like this. And so he said, then Tonglen is not good. Because Tonglen is kind of dealing with very extreme emotions. You give everyone your happiness. You take all their suffering. He said, I tried to tell them, no, please temporarily stop that, Yes, it's good to be compassionate. Yes, it's good to be loving, but no, don't do that, he said. Shamatha, it's what you need. Shamatha will give you some, weight, which is also why, here we start with shamatha, with the breath. Presence, weightiness. You need to not move. So this is, one reason, why. So absolute bodhicitta is also about weightiness, but not in the shamatha way per se. It's more about seeing space. Recognizing space and not be moved so easily. And Tonglen is more about working with emotions. But if you're not careful, if you're not prepared, those are very strong emotions that you're working with. So you should not so quickly go into that. You should ground yourself first with the preliminaries, 4 thoughts that turn the mind, training in shamatha, and then making bodhicitta vow. That is a general training of relative bodhicitta. That is not taking on other people's suffering, giving away your happiness. So first you train in those preliminaries, right? 4 thoughts that turn the mind, establishing presence of what we call calm abiding through breath, watching breath. Third, generating bodhicitta, aspiring, making those aspirations. Then begin to cultivate some understanding of absolute bodhicitta. When all of those are present, then you can practice Tonglen without so easily Tonglen turning into a source of problem. Yeah. So hopefully that answered. Yeah. So now these two, there are five lines altogether, right? 5 one-liners for absolute bodhicitta. Regard all phenomena as dreams. Examine the nature of birthless awareness. Let even the antidote be freed in its own place. The essence of the path is settling in the alaya state. These are 4 successively more advanced and profound levels of practicing absolute bodhicitta. And the last one-liner for absolute bodhicitta is, in between sessions, be a child of magical illusion. And so 4 one-liners for 4 successive levels of more advanced or more profound meditation on absolute bodhicitta. The 5th one is, in between sessions here mean when you are not doing formal meditations. So in our way of saying it, when you get off the cushion. Yeah? When you get off the cushion, how do you practice absolute bodhicitta? And I think it's good for us to look at that first, because it gives us some idea about, well, why are we practicing absolute bodhicitta in a formal way, in those 4 levels of formal meditation represented by the first 4 liners, first 4 one-liners. It's to be understood by looking at the 5th line, which is, in the post-meditation state, in between sessions, be a child of magical illusion. This is a slightly kind of more poetic translation of what's literally being said there. It's basically child of illusion. Yeah, it is. It's gyume kebu. Gyume kebu. So a child of magical illusion. So what the connotation here is, be like a child of magical illusion. What's the connotation here is, be free, not be stuck, not be trapped, but go about, experiencing all of this like you were magically conjured. So a magician can conjure, right? A form, a living being, and all of that. But that form that is conjured out, that magical illusion, is not substantially there. So it's saying that, when we really understand the nature of mind, which is what absolute bodhicitta, another way of expressing that, when we really perceive the nature of mind, we become free. We no longer get stuck. We no longer get dragged around, by our emotions, by conditions, by situations. Whether situations and emotions that we label as desirable, we habitually label as desirable, or situations and conditions that we habitually label as undesirable, with regards to both of them, we're no longer being dragged around by them. It's not like you cannot see the difference between those two. It's you are not subject to, you are not under the power of That's what it means. Gyume kebu. Kebu is child. Gyume is illusion. Be like a child of magical illusion. So in this magic, in this display of magic, anything is possible. So nothing rattles you. Anything is possible. So many years ago, I remember when I was in graduate school, these more senior graduate students, I overheard one anecdote. They said, I don't know if they themselves saw this or they were reporting what even earlier graduate students experienced. So at that time, way back, at the University of Virginia in the Buddhist Studies program, which is primarily Tibetan Buddhist studies, especially in earlier periods, there were these brilliant kind of really learned Gelugpa geishas that were invited to be scholars in the program. And so they would be there for like a semester or 2 semesters, and they would be reading these really profound kind of philosophical texts with the graduate students. So then, when these old geishas, these geishas that were trained in Tibet, before communist China took over, some of them came to be a scholar in residence. So there was one of these scholars who had just, come out of Tibet and came out of India. And then he came to Charlottesville, Virginia. And one day, some of the graduate students thought, once they met him, they thought, let's surprise him. And so what they did was, I don't know if I heard the story right, but they took some frozen thing from the freezer and put it into the microwave, okay? And pressed, 2 minutes or whatever. And then 2 minutes later, this thing was like hot. So they showed this to the Geshe, expecting to get a response from him. Like, wow, what just happened? It was like frozen. And then like in 5 minutes, this is all hot, or melted, And so they thought, oh, maybe he didn't understand what just happened. So they took another thing from the freezer and put it in the microwave, and then did it again. And so then finally, something like the Geshe said, what are you all doing? And they said, did you see like what this thing can do? He was like, yeah. He said, no, I understand, what's going on. And they said, have you seen this before? Like in India? I mean, they knew, Tibet, like, have you seen this before, like in India? He was like, no. And so they're like, first time, right? You're seeing this? He was like, yeah. And then they said, so how come you were not surprised, And he said, if I did not know about emptiness, of course I'll be very surprised. But I know Buddha's teachings on emptiness, so nothing surprises me. I said, yeah, of course it's possible. Anything is possible. He said, it's not a big deal. Now, of course, the example, sounds kind of pedestrian, but really, when we understand emptiness, then we can be like a child of magical illusion. Once we understand the illusory nature of things, then we become unencumbered. We become free. Then you might say, then we also lose excitement. I don't know. So we train in absolute bodhicitta so that we train in the formal meditations of absolute bodhicitta in stages so that we can become better and better at being a child of illusion, so that we become better and better. And in fact, to be a child of illusion is not to artificially become a child of illusion, but in fact, it's more to recognize that we are, in fact, child. What does child mean? It doesn't have the connotation of like childlike, childlike innocence. No, child here means product of, something that has arisen from, which is what gyurume kebu in Tibetan, it means like the product of an illusion. So if you were a product of an illusion, that means you have no real, true existence. You just seemingly exist. So once we understand, like it only seems so, then we understand how that Zen monk could say, is that so? Is that what it seems to you? It only seems so. It only appears so. It is not so. Once we get that, and we don't forget, get that and don't forget that, then, that's what understanding emptiness is. So absolute bodhicitta, those 4 lines, the first line, regard all phenomena as dreams. In the commentary, it says this line and the next line. The first line is to point to the lack of essence or lack of inherent existence of perceived objects. Whatever it is that we experience, all the things that we experience through our senses, see the selflessness or the lack of inherent existence, or the lack of essence, the lack of substantiality, the lack of fixity in perceived reality. The next line, examine the nature of birthless awareness, pertains to turning that and seeing how the subject that is doing the perception, that too lacks inherent existence. So both subject and object that turns up when an experience takes place, see their interdependent nature, see how they interdependently arise, and therefore both are lacking in substantiality. And when we see that, again, the point is, when we see that, we become more free. Questions? Comments? I still have more to say about each of those 2 lines, but for tonight, I think, now let's see if there's any questions or comments.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
Can you give some examples on how the subject, the one who is observing, lacks substantial existence?
Right now, I think it's helpful to just understand it as this is not so much something that we try to get intellectually, although we can, we can, and I will try. But more importantly, to see how it's sort of like, I like to use proving mathematical sets, like very primitive mathematics from when I was like in high school. I remember, calculus, things like that, It's like knowing the answer is not what it is about. To be able to prove it, right? To prove the set, that's where the task is. So likewise, to know that, to kind of know, oh, nature of birthless awareness, like the subject lacks inherent existence, right? Lacks substantiality. That itself, not very useful. The proof of that, how do you prove that? And here, to prove it in the context of meditation, that's when it's going to work. That's what's going to free us from being stuck, from being trapped. How? Right now, we tend to generalize and say, I. When through meditation, we kind of slow down these thoughts that like are rushing and rushing and rushing. Through cultivating shamatha and letting the mind settle, we can see more clearly each moment of awareness that is going on. And when we look closely at each moment of awareness that is going on, we will see how what we formerly and superficially label as I, that is superficial. That in fact, about the only thing we can account for is that in any given moment, there is a moment of consciousness. There's a moment of knowing. There's a moment of awareness. But that moment of awareness doesn't last beyond that moment. Now, all this is talk until you directly see, right, how long that moment is. Right? You won't really get it, how momentary and therefore how insubstantial this I actually is. And this is to be verified. And this is to be verified through meditation, through training the mind. And now it's just some rumor. So I joke, I said, we Buddhists, we say 4 noble truths, 4 noble truths, 4 noble truths. I said, they are only noble truths for noble beings, meaning those who have actually seen these truths. They are the noble beings. They are the Buddhas. For the rest of us, at best, it's the 4 noble rumors. Rumors reported by noble beings for us, confused beings, samsaric beings, at best, it's only the 4 noble rumors. So what do we do with the noble rumors? We have to figure out how to verify those rumors and to be able to say, yes, they are true because I have seen them. I have seen how they are true. Likewise, these 4 lines here for the nature of there's 4 lines here that pertains to absolute bodhicitta. It's something to be experienced, to be directly seen, to be cultivated through meditation, and not so much through debate, thinking through. Although we have to start with that, which is what we will do more.
Dr. Lai, there's one question.
Yes.
Could you please clarify the terminology birthless awareness?
Not tonight, because, you know, we're going to look at it in more detail. Yeah. So awareness, so I can say very briefly, awareness, which you could translate as consciousness. Simply what it's talking about, at least, okay, each of these statements, as you verify it with your own direct experience, your own meditation, you will see more and more profound levels. I'm not insinuating that I have seen these more profound levels. Just, you know, to be absolutely honest, okay? Some experience, yes. And enough experience that I have confidence that yes, indeed, there are more levels to this. So I'll share with you the level that I can relate to. So when we talk about awareness here, without getting too technical, we're talking about the ability to know, which we all have right now, right? The ability to perceive. And that's why here I am, right? And there you are. So that, so we can say that's the awareness. What we need to see through meditation is how this awareness has this quality that here I've translated as birthless. More common is, I think, the word unborn. But I don't like that word unborn. Maybe because I live in the South. I see that word all over the place for different reasons. But that also then got me to think about in English, when you say something is unborn, what you're saying, what you're also saying is, this is English, this is not Dharma, but then it has implications, right? If we're going to use the expression unborn. When you say something is unborn, right? What you're saying is, for whatever reasons, something has happened so that it cannot be born. And so that when those things that are preventing it from being born, if you take that away, then it will be born. But here, birthless means birthless, meaning it has no birth. It's there, but it has no birth. And because it has no birth, it's also deathless. So birthless. That this awareness is birthless. Makewa. Birthless.
Thank you.
Again, important to be able to experience what it means to be birthless. This nature, the nature of this. Okay, homework. Homework is this. So there is a part with each of these lines, these 4 lines. I said 4 progressively more advanced and more profound understanding about the nature of mind, the nature of phenomena, or you can interchangeably say emptiness, interdependent arising, or nature of mind. These are all, you know, interchangeable expressions for what absolute bodhicitta is. Likewise, absolute bodhicitta. So there is a part where we can kind of try to understand intellectually, so that we get a slight taste of, you know, what might this be talking about, yeah, which we'll do more next class. But more important than that is also, remember that these 4 are given in the context of formal meditation. So if you want to begin the formal meditation for absolute bodhicitta, and therefore you begin with the first one-liner, which is regard all phenomena as dreams. First of all, please understand that dream here has nothing to do with, you know, dream analysis. Has nothing to do with dreams are the portal to understanding about, you know, things that you normally can't see. No. Nothing to do with that, okay? I'm not saying dreams can't do that, so I'm not getting into that debate. But that's not the meaning of dreams here. Yeah. Dreams here is basically, I said, in modern times, maybe a good substitute for dreams is to say, like a movie. Regard all phenomena like a movie. Phenomena, big word. So here, let's just say for now, experience. Meaning whatever it is that you're experiencing, see that they are like a dream. See that they are like what goes on in a movie. Next week, we will talk more about this. But in terms of meditation, if you want to start now, so you start with, again, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind before you get into the meditation. 4 thoughts that turn the mind. Quickly review that as you're going to start your session. Think of the inspiration, which for Buddhists is the Buddha. And then if you practice in the Vajrayana tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, you think of your guru. You think of the guru principle. Then you think how you kind of invoke that and say, I want to be like you. So show me how to get there. So to be inspired that way. Then generate Bodhicitta, the resolve to become Buddha for the benefit of all beings. And then start doing establishing presence through counting breath. In, out, in, out, in, out. Up until 21. Now, add one more thing, which is this first line. How do we add the first line of Absolute Bodhicitta? This is what you do. As you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever distractions that turn up during that time, whether it's suddenly 1, 2, 3, and the minute you recognize, your mind has gone somewhere else, whether you blanked out, kind of like momentarily went asleep, or, it went to some other town, some other food, whatever it is, the minute you see that, think like, oh, this experience right there, it's like a dream. What does that mean? When you recognize something is a dream, that has no power over you. I think we've all experienced this, Sometimes we're in a dream and then it becomes very strong, like scary. But sometimes, we're like, oh, this is a dream. And immediately, right, when we recognize this is a dream, even if whatever the scary thing doesn't go away, it doesn't do anything anymore. It doesn't, you have no fear anymore. You can go, oh, this is a dream. And in fact, you might go, okay, let me go enjoy it. I remember, it's happening less now. I remember how I would wake up in the middle of a very good dream and then say, oh, no, I don't want that to end, Then I go back and try to go back to sleep and successful, go back into the dream. But then with some awareness now, oh, this is a dream, I'm just in here to enjoy it. So likewise, with doing this meditation, without getting too carried away, every time something turns up to distract you from the main work of counting breath, here at this point, you still are doing kind of contrived meditation, but that's okay. You label that and say, this has no power over me, which is what dream means. This has no power over me. So I don't need to fight it. for sure I don't need to be dragged around by it. This has no power over me. It's insubstantial, Buddhist talk. But more directly, it's basically going, nope, no power over me. Then you come back to your breath. Then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, COVID-19. Again, immediately, this has no power over me. Go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's for lunch? No, this has no power over me. This is insubstantial. Go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to check my stimulus check. No, there's no power over me. Come back. So that's the homework. Yeah? So we're going to stop tonight. And at the end, we say we should dedicate merit. So think, whatever, if there's any good that we have accumulated tonight, not just yourself, but anyone and everyone that has participated tonight, you think if there is any good, if there's any merit, if there's any virtue that has come together, that has been created through this last couple of hours of experience, may that good, may that virtue be dedicated to the happiness of all beings, to the freedom from suffering of all beings, and to the eventual freedom, the state of Buddha of all beings. So just think of that as I chant a traditional dedication verse from Shantideva, not from Shantideva, but this is said to summarize Shantideva's Bodhicitta. And the wording says, this precious Bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. And where it has arisen, may it not decline, but instead may it become stronger and stronger. Changju Semjo Rinpoche Ma Gye Banam Gye Gyurchi Gye Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Gong Lu just to make an announcement for those of you who have some interest, if you have any interest in this particular Tibetan Buddhist ritual practice called Sangchu, which is cleansing through aromatic smoke. This Sunday from 9 to 11, I will be teaching that particular practice. Again, then the text for that practice is called Source of All Auspiciousness. You can also download that freely from the TibetanSpirit.com website. And this is for this Sunday from 9 to 11. For those of you, who are into smells, what I call smells and bells Buddhism, and certainly there's smells and bells for that practice. Recently, the Lojong Oracle, which is like the state oracle for Old Tibet. Today, he doesn't function so much as a state oracle, but nonetheless, the Dalai Lama consults this oracle called Lojong. So the Lojong Oracle has said that during this pandemic times, it's helpful to do more of this sanctuary, this cleansing offering. And so, if you are of that persuasion, if you have interest in that sort of stuff, you can join this Sunday. Again, we will live stream from Zoom and push over to Facebook, so you can watch on Facebook, and then I will see you on Sunday. If not, then I will see you next Thursday. You have a good night.
Thanks.